everyone. I'm Vladimir Gutierrez.
And I'm Jerika Duncan. We're going to go straight to the White House where Josh Earnest is giving a briefing. We're expected to hear more about the decision to send more troops to Syria. Let's listen in.
Okay, Major.
How long will they stay in Syria?
Well, Major, we've been quite candid about the fact that this is not a short-term proposition in terms of our counter-ISIL strategy. So, what we're going to continue to do, and the instructions that the President has given to his national security team, is to continually assess our strategy and look for ways to intensify those elements of the strategy that are showing the most promise.
So this up to 50 or less than 50 will stay there for an open-ended period of time?
I don't have a specific date to give you when they will come.
The reason I ask is because there's a distinction I think you would acknowledge between raids, which you have said have occurred, and the permanent positioning of U.S. special operators. There's a difference, correct?
Well, I certainly wouldn't describe it as permanent.
Well,
but I will.
But so it's not an in and out operation.
Stipulating that I would not describe it as permanent, I would acknowledge that there is a difference, and it reflects the intensification of those elements of our strategy that have shown some promise.
And I want you also to acknowledge, because this is important operationally, if you have special operators in any place for a given period of time, two questions: will they have air cover if they are engaged in assistance operations that take them close to the fight? Yes or no?
Well, that's an operational question that I'd refer to the Department of Defense. However, you have already seen...
But you've opened up the conversation to contingency plans the Pentagon has already built in. And you and I both know every contingency operation for special operators carries with it the implied support of air cover.
What has been underway for more than a year now is U.S. military pilots and coalition military pilots taking airstrikes in coordination with local forces that are fighting on the ground. So that kind of air cover is something that local opposition forces have already benefited from. But in terms of
special operators for the United States would not be denied.
Well, for a specific operational question like this, I'd refer to the Department of Defense.
You know that's true.
Well, again,
the President's not going to stick special operators out there without U.S. air cover.
Well, we have made clear that they will have the equipment that they need to do as much as they can to keep them safe, and I'm confident that the Department of Defense has a contingency plan. But for what those contingency plans are, you should check with them.
And would you acknowledge that special operators would be not only generally at risk, but because they represent the United States government, because they have not been in Syria for any length of time, they've been moving in and out, they will have a target on their back. And if they are in some ways either encircled or in jeopardy, they will have military extraction operations to support them if, in fact, they get into a dicey situation. Also correct?
Well, there's no denying the significant risk that they are facing. And is that risk elevated because they wear the uniform of the United States of America? I would allow that that's probably the case.
Okay.
But for what those contingency plans are, you check with the Department of Defense.
So just for the record, because what I'm trying to establish here is they are combat forces, special operators. They are not desk people. They are, as you just said, the best fighters we have. They will have air cover, and they will have extract operations behind them. That's 3 levels of combat operations that are implied with their continued staying and operations in Syria, correct?
Well, again, Major, what we have focused on is what is their mission.
Right.
They're not in a combat mission.
Right, but you have, as you've acknowledged, these elements that must support them and always have supported them in what they are trying to accomplish. And you're not going to take those away from them. So we have 3 layers of potential combat operations inside Syria that we did not have when they were moving in and out. The placement of them in Syria for any length of time implies these other levels of protection, which are all combat, correct?
Well, again, I think what you primarily described are air combat operations that, these are military pilots taking military strikes against enemy targets that have been underway for more than a year. So I'm not sure that this represents a dramatic change in terms of our military air presence. You can check with the Department of Defense to confirm that, or to sort of understand what the impact on that would be. But the idea of our military pilots using weapons to protect fighters on the ground is not new. That's something that they've been doing for more than a year now.
Can you name the local forces they'll be working with?
For operational security reasons, I can't.
Okay, so we don't know exactly who they're going to be operating with.
Well, somebody does. It's just not something we're prepared to discuss publicly.
You mentioned that they will not be charging to take a hill. You said that. will the special operators be near the hill?
Yeah, I look, that's
That's not a silly question, because they were near the operation, near enough for Joshua Wheeler to lose his life in northern Iraq. So this is a significant question about proximity and trying to accomplish a mission.
Again, our military personnel will be in a train, advise, and assist mission. And it means that it will not be their primary responsibility to lead the charge up the hill. That is, I'm confident, a rather antiquated hypothetical analogy I'm drawing here, but I'm just trying to illustrate exactly what their role is. Will they be in the vicinity offering that advice and assistance? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that that's the case. In fact, the situation that you just described, where U.S. Special Operations Forces accompanied Iraqi security forces on a raid, that was precisely the scenario. You saw Iraqi security forces conduct the incursion to go and try to rescue the hostages. And U.S. military personnel were in the vicinity, but they were not leading the charge. But once these Iraqi security forces got pinned down, they sought assistance from the U.S. military personnel that were nearby. And that is, it is in the context of that engagement that Master Sergeant Wheeler lost his life.
To Jim's question about the future, if this intensification works, and military commanders say to the President, Mr. President, in Syria, we're actually gaining traction for the first time. We need more people to achieve greater success. The President would say what?
Well, let me first of all say...
Because one of two things happen in these scenarios. Either you have problems and you need more forces to reinforce what you have already committed, or you have success and you need more forces to achieve more. In both scenarios, the American people are going to be wondering if this is not the beginning of something that grows over time.
Well, let me say that we've already seen progress from these local opposition forces. That's precisely the reason the President is seeking to intensify our support for them. So it would not be a situation where military commanders would come to the President and say, we're seeing progress in Syria for the first time. The fact is, we've already seen some progress, and that is why we've made this decision. That's why the President's made this decision.
To use your phrase,
to
force
intensify.
multiplier, if they say we are force multiplying with our special operators, and more special operators will achieve greater success, what would the President say? Good, let's put more in there.
I think the
Yes
President,
or no?
the President would say, that's a hypothetical situation. So we'll see. The President has routinely told his team, including his military advisors, that he wants them to be continually assessing their strategy to determine what elements of that strategy are showing the most promise. And the President is prepared to intensify those elements of the strategy that are showing the most promise. In this case, it's intensifying our support for local fighters on the ground.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay.